What is going on, everybody? Justin Thomas here from TopShelf Fandom, taking a deep dive into the stories that you love. If you have not subscribed, please make sure to do so, and we're going to jump right into this one. This is going to be an audio-only recap, review, and breakdown of Peaky Blinders, Episode 2, Season 5, Black Cats. Of course, this will have spoilers for Peaky Blinders, essentially all of Season 5. We will be focused on the second episode, Black Cats, but if you have not seen my first video that goes over the Season 5 opener, aptly named Black Tuesday, please check the right-hand corner for the link right now and check that out first. That video goes over the economic downfall extensively, quite extensively, in fact, not only in America, but across the world. This is the crash of '29 that leads to what is known as the Great Depression. Now, I didn't spend the whole time talking about deflation and just really trying to hammer down how shitty things were during this time, just for shits and giggles. The story is driven just as much by the times as it is by the characters. The world is happening to the characters are not happening to the world. I definitely tried to convey the frustration that the people would be feeling at this point in time, and just probably being dumbfounded in so many ways, just because it is the height of the Industrial Revolution. Commodities are made faster and more efficiently than ever before. There's a surplus of goods and no money to buy those goods. A lot of young men who come back from the war in Britain, France, as well as Germany, to find their plight in life to be worse off than when they left for the war. So a lot of people would be looking for an answer. When people lose faith in the government, not just those who govern, systematic changes within the very structure of the government, not just a replacement of a figurehead or representatives, Tommy must make a decision with his newfound power in Parliament. He can't sit on the fence between capitalism and socialism. And residing in a post-World War I era, just under a decade of the Jazz Age. This would be a short uptick in culture and society life, but it does not last. Quickly goes down, and it goes down dramatically, and they've already been dealing with all their internal issues from the war, just trying to get themselves settled and set up. And now, as soon as they've been legitimized, for the most part, legitimized means very little post Black Tuesday. Alright, even though Peaky's is one of my favorite series, I do have to give a little bit of feedback on some of the negatives of the series, and there are a few. One specifically, I wish they would have pumped the brakes a little bit with the stylized cinematography. They usually do get away with this, since Peaky's is framed in the sense of we're seeing it through creator Stephen Knight's childhood envisionment of them, the backstreet razor gangs. We're seeing the glorification of this lifestyle. We're seeing how they are perceived as time goes on, not how they actually are. We get the true essence of who they are through their actual reality of the internal struggle. Scenes have glamour, and they're stylized and over the top and epic in every way, but you never see Thomas Shelby smile. You never see any actual happiness, not even a semblance of it, especially when it comes to Thomas Shelby. So we're seeing the personification of this mobster mentality being glorified throughout time and throughout tales and through a child's eyes, essentially. Knight grew up in Birmingham hearing about these gains. So this season is heavy on what seems to be a little bit of tongue-in-cheek when it comes to the hallucinations that Tommy has and talking to Grace so much. We get a very lucid Thomas Shelby, almost played to the point that it seems like they could go the route of having a lot of what happened in some of these episodes be lucid dreams, hallucinations, fever dreams, laudanum, opium dreams, whatever you want to call them. I don't think they're going down that route, but it is definitely supposed to be a little bit deceiving. Thomas does seemingly have a lack of control on his internal struggles, even though I know he's not a perfect mind by any means, far from it. Nonetheless, I'm probably going to be interested in doing a playback on Season 4 to see how much grace is injected into Thomas's internal struggle. It does seem to be creeping back up on him, which could definitely happen in real life, but it's always a little bit questionable when you have an internal struggle pop up out of nowhere when it's just most advantageous. But what I do like is the injection of grace via Charlie, his son now, that is grown at least a few years since the last season and is exhibiting the behaviors of Grace. In a sense, questioning what Tommy's doing. He seems to be not on board with Thomas Shelby, and Tommy is definitely struggling with his son. Tommy goes out to the scarecrow that has been left out in the middle of his field. We see a callback to the earlier seasons when we see wiring to a mine that is present in the field. He has Charlie run directly out of it in a straight path, and then continues to test limits. We see him struggling a bit to make the decision to disarm and not actually ignite and end his own life. In this season, we definitely see a lot of examples of Thomas struggling to just continue on, to continue this fight. It's getting to be a little bit much. Essentially ends up taking out the bombs in a most badass way, yes, but this is one of the scenes that I think was a little bit over-stylized. It was very, very cool, but he takes a Tommy gun to the landmine and just blows it to pieces. It's a little bit much, and I think the slight nuances when it comes to these little details of how they treated the bombs in the earlier seasons and they gave that realistic tension really suits the series. But I do understand the direction that they're going with Thomas. He is becoming reckless. He's definitely verging on having a just straight up death wish. So we see him just lashing out at the world and essentially putting his life on the line. And don't get me wrong, I mean, Cillian Murphy is one of the top 10 actors of this generation, in my opinion. And I still think that some of these scenes are just, they are very difficult for anybody, if anybody even could pull them off. And yes, I'm nitpicking, but these really were the only things that stood out to me as far as flaws within this season. The acting seemed a little bit forced in some scenes, and it's probably because these scenes are extremely difficult to convey, and it's very ambitious and something that's, I don't even know if it's possible without having a little bit of that, something that you see a lot in young filmmakers' work. You see a little bit of exaggeration and over-the-top emotional transitions, or attempted emotional transitions. It's in the almost Mickey Mousing as far as the score and the soundtrack and the FX going essentially right with all of his movements and the holding of shots for just a tad bit too long. But it's probably, let me know how you guys feel. I think maybe it works for some people and it just doesn't work for me. Maybe I've made too many student films and seen too many student films. The series is above and beyond any student film. It's just these few little slight little details that I've noticed, and they kind of go away after the third episode. And we get down to business. Michael. I'm loving what's happening with Michael. I've never trusted Michael. I've loved him as a character. I think he is really able to play the foil, or even the antagonist to Tommy, if that comes to it. He is a very formidable actor as well as character. He has strengths. He has a little bit about him that I've never really trusted. He was a little bit too eager. He's the only one that smiles, and he just seems to take a little bit too much pleasure and slide in these positions a little bit too easily. His alliance with Paul, listening to his mom, got him essentially exiled last season, which again is a great story thread because we can definitely sympathize with him. We definitely can understand where he was coming from, but this puts him in a bad place with the rest of the family. And now he comes back toting a new gal on his arm. Gina, an American, a very, I would say unlikable, but unlikable in a good way, character that's very brash. She is somebody that gives just enough information about herself to showcase that she's not being completely a rollover, and she's not going to let anybody walk all over her. And she always gives a little bit of information that isn't flattering about herself, but it's never information that's detrimental. It's an old trick. It's a trick that actually works very well. If you go into a room or you start off a relationship with a group of people or a individual and you disclose information that it doesn't really show you in the best light, but it's not detrimental, it shows that you're honest, and it shows that you're a sincere person and earn trust through almost a faux flaw. And I see this happening with Gina a lot. She does it with every encounter that she has, and she's very much so, I'm not here to please you and I am who I am, and I'm not lying about it. But she might still be lying to a point. So when Michael arrives, he's interrogated essentially by Tommy and Arthur. They want to know what happened on his trip over. They received a phone call that he was plotting with the enemies of Thomas Shelby. Turns out that it was a group called the Billy Boys, and we soon find out who the Billy Boys are. Now, I want to stop here and tell you that if you want a actual historical perspective on who the Billy Boys were, and a wonderful channel, check out History with Hilbert. He's done 2 Peaky Blinder videos now, and he goes into great detail about who they really were. So definitely check that link out. Just to give you a quick idea of who the Billy Boys are, they did originate in the 1920s, essentially as a Protestant street gang in Glasgow, led by a man named Billy Fullerton. They tend to clash with Catholics as well as Irish. We get Billy Fullerton with the rest of the Billy Boys, and this is our introduction to the British Union of Fascists. This was a fascist gang. They provided security for them. The lead member was a official member, as well as participating in quite a few pretty egregious street fights that are widely available on YouTube. Tommy learns that the Billy Boys were out looking for him, and this is kind of another test for Tommy. He is going back to the old street ways to get a handle on the finances, because again, cash is king, so they need to be embracing the Peaky, not the Shelby Incorporated side of things. Boys per se, but we do see a little bit of a struggle between the generations. We see Finn trying to prove himself on the streets. He has his first bullet removed in this episode, and he's just out there to be out there. He doesn't necessarily have to be out there. He's trying to represent the family, rep the name, you may say. But you also see this devotion to this backstreet razor gang, and as far as Michael is concerned, this seems to be outdated. No matter what the current financial crisis is dictating, the Americans don't want to deal with an old-fashioned organization like the Peakies, and that they're on their way out. We see the Billy Boys challenge the Peakies and say that they're essentially washed up, and man, do they challenge them. I cannot express how violent and gritty this scene is. As a former boxer myself, of course, nothing like Bonnie Gold himself, but just seeing the introduction and entrance of the Billy Boys with their song emerging from the depths of this forest after having this crack shot out of nowhere that nails Aberama in his arm, rendering him essentially helpless. And we do see Bonnie emerge from the caravan, but he lowers his weapon actually when he notices he's outgunned. He is just beat to a pulp to send a message to Tommy. Very accurate depiction of, even if you are very good with your hands, if you are outgunned and you are just not able to engage in any type of orthodox fashion, if somebody's beating you in the head with an iron club, it is game over, man. And it is so brutal to see Bonnie Gold just get brutally beat within an inch of his life, and then just they take the life out of him after they prop him up on a cross. It is on so many levels. It is just an egregious act. But it is very true to all those people that think that they can outbox or outkick their way through a gunfight or any type of real situation, and how helpless you can very quickly become if you are outnumbered. A lesser series probably would have had Bonnie throw a few right crosses and some hooks and get some uppercuts in and put up a fight, but this is very true to how violence actually happens, and it's very troubling, and it's also very impactful, and it really sticks with you, and it works as an emotional spine for Aberama for the rest of this season. You see a once proficient, very skilled boxer just be useless, and then you see a father, a trained killer himself, also helpless, cannot do anything. Very effective scene. Just heartbreaking to see Aberama helpless, looking at his now lifeless son. It's so vicious, and it stabs you right in the heart. And then, to cap it all off, it's time for business. That was just the show. Bill then leans down and begins to instruct Aberama to tell Tommy what he has witnessed here, and also to let Tommy know that they'll have all of the pitches for tracks from Nottingham to Cheltenham. They will have those pitches. Our Tommy will be his next victim. So they are in a turf war. This is essentially at the same level as Billy Kimber in the first season when they're fighting over territory at racetracks for pitches. And this is very true. There's the Gaines of London and the Gaines of Birmingham. Read both books, and this is very true to actually what these Razor Gaines were and what they fought for. It was for territory on these tracks, and it was brutal. So we're going to end it there. We do have the final moments of this episode with Aberama making his way to Tommy's household. Of course, demanding that he gets revenge. We also have some other business to discuss in our next episode, where I do want to solely focus on Oswald Mosley, a man that I can say with all confidence, with no trouble sleeping at night after, is a complete piece of shit. Somebody that I was unaware of before this series, and I don't know how I feel about how much I know about him at this point, but he is definitely a worthy adversary. So if you thought the Billy Boys were bad, why don't you meet who they're working with? Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you to all my Patreons that help me create content. If you're looking to help out and support creativity, and $3 a month would be barely noticeable to you, it would make a huge impact over here. So make sure to subscribe and hit that like button and leave a comment down below.